Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix. I'm back again for another edition of the Astro Weather, and we're going to try to fold the Astro Weather for today and the general forecast for the weekend. All right, hold on a second. Let me just mute me because I hear my voice in my head enough. I don't need to hear it on the internets. Okay, so well, welcome, and let's jump in. Let's jump in. Let's see what life has in store for us. A really interesting video coming out of Project Veritas with the guy losing his mind. And to me, I mean, there's your moon in Aries, right? I mean, I know this happened earlier, but it's being displayed during a particular cycle, right? So the moon in Aries and conjunct Jupiter, conjunct Chiron, the guy loses his mind, right? Just an extreme display of uncontrollable anger and rage and fury. Really pretty interesting to watch in a lot of ways, especially because when you look at some of these events that get released to the public, we see them and we match them up with what's happening astrologically, it begins to make a lot of sense. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday when I played the Louis C.K. and Joe Rogan clip, where Louis C.K. was basically having to get in a car and take a field trip with the least popular student in his class. And it perfectly synced up with the Venus-Saturn conjunction. And so we like this stuff. It gives the mundane effect a little sizzle. So let's get into where we are today, and with a bit of a forecast for the weekend. All right. So remember yesterday we had the moon in a conjunction, stellium, Jupiter, Juno, Chiron, and some fiery energy yesterday. Definitely some fiery energy. The moon is going to be here with us in the third decan of Aries, putting it in the Sagittarian decan. So waxing philosophically about one's emotions with enthusiasm and zeal. Clearly, that's part of the program today. But over the weekend, the moon is going to move into Taurus, and it's an interesting moon for a number of reasons. It's exalted in Taurus, and we like our leisure time with the moon in Taurus. That's great. It's the weekend. Take advantage of it. And it's going to move into conjunction with Uranus on Saturday, Sunday, and take up something new with your leisure time. That would be a good expression of the moon Uranus conjunction. If you like to cook, get your recipe book out or go online, get on the internets, and find an unusual recipe. Test your culinary skills. Do something different, right? That's the moon Uranus conjunction. On a slightly more serious note, real estate wise, I think this could be a fairly interesting weekend. If you are looking for a place, if you're in the market for a home, Venus will be at right around 2. Let's see, it'd be 0 today, 1 Saturday. It'd be about 1 to 2. Venus and Pisces, which we'll talk about, coming in and sextiling the true node. Of course, we'll have the moon right around here. So if you're in the market for a new place, I would circle Saturday off as a target day, because there's a number of things I think that could happen. Number one, something that might have not been available or overpriced, or was off the market comes back. And the relative ease with which contracts can get done this weekend, especially around real estate, I think is something, if you're in that place and you're looking, this is a good weekend. It's a very good weekend. Things could go very smoothly this weekend. Let's talk a little bit about Venus and Pisces. Going to be here. It's the next Venus cycle, and Venus exalted in the lovely sign of Pisces. It's dreamy. It's mermaid-esque, right? This is the siren, the song of the siren, Venus and Pisces. It gives us a very different view of relating. Venus and Aquarius, especially with that Saturn conjunction. It's kind of cool and detached, and you know, everybody gets a trophy, but not everybody gets a trophy with the Venus Saturn conjunction. And so we talked about standing up for your weird friends or the unpopular people. The Venus here is very, very different. It's unconditional. It is unconditional. And if you are into practicing random acts of kindness, the Venus transit through Pisces can be really good. Really, really good. It can be very unconditional. You know, the walls and separation melt under Venus and Pisces. You go to the other side with Venus and Virgo. That's, no offense to people of Venus and Virgo, but that's where the walls come up, right? That's where the gate to relationship is erected. May I see your papers, please? Right? This is not like that. So we get a bit of a respite, I think, with Venus here, and looking forward to more of a relaxed and convivial, forgiving, creative, even romantic expression through this transit. I really like it. Now, eventually Venus is going to catch up with Neptune, and we'll talk about that as it gets closer. Anyway, a good weekend ahead. I really like the weekend, especially when we come into tonight and early tomorrow. We get that Venus Moon sextile. Stay in bed, lounge around a little bit. If you're single, lounge around a little bit. You don't have to get up, right? Make your coffee, hang out, read the paper, do whatever you do, right? It's one of those mornings. If you're a couple, definitely stay in bed. You know, this is really good astrological snuggle weather. Okay. So if you're single, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Snuggle with your cat. I have one. If you were here, you could borrow him. We have the sun at 7 Aquarius. So getting ready to move into second decan. It's still in the Aquarian decan. By the time we get into Monday, the sun will be moving into the Gemini decan, and people will have a lot to say come Monday. That is for sure. Today, the moon will be in more of a square with Pluto. So there's some tension before we get to the relax and the release of the moon in Taurus. There's some tension. Again, I'm going to bring it back to homes, property, especially if you're like in a bidding war where you're having to negotiate. Sometimes the moon Pluto square, and I'm just bringing this into a transaction. Sometimes the moon Pluto square, especially when you're dealing with this ingress into Taurus, walking away from something might be your biggest strength. Right? If you just feel like, well, you know, these TNCs are you know, they're not going to work for me, or, you know, I want the owner to take care of these things. Well, the owner said that you're going to be responsible for it. Have the courage to walk away if you need to. Call the bluff, right? Because the one thing, and people who are really, really good at sales, right? They're like, we're always attracted to property. We're always attracted to, oh, I love this. Look at this. Look at these big bay windows. Can't you just imagine having our coffee here and looking out over these big bay windows? You see in the distance, yeah, there's a ship. Oh, just, you know, that's where people go, right? Buying a home is an emotional expression. It's an emotional experience. buying anything really, unless it's a toilet bowl cleaner, is an emotional experience where you connected with your emotions. But this is one of those weekends, right, where if you're in that process, the moon Pluto square, it's like, don't be afraid to walk away, because it resolves itself. You still have to deal with the early degrees of the moon squaring the sun, right? With the moon squaring the sun, it could be pressure, social pressure. Your friends. Why did you do that? Why did you walk away? Oh my God, I love that house. I love that place. Or what? What? You told her to do what? That you weren't going to put up with the drama anymore? Well, give me her number. No, I mean, that's the moon Saturn square, right? And then there could be doubt with the moon Saturn square. Did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Let it play out a little bit. Just let it play out a little bit. You don't really want to have to fight for principle either. That's the other thing. And principle has two meanings here. One goes back to real estate, and the other has to do with your own principles. Because there's a path of least resistance this weekend. And that's when the moon has this sweet sextile with Venus. Find the path of least resistance. Meanwhile, Mars still in square with Saturn, beginning to separate. Mars has been so slow, real slow. Uranus slow too. We also have this trine with Mars and the Sun, which we talked about yesterday, and that's again adaptability, pivots, mutable meets fixed. So that energy is still around, still in the air. It could be a very active and very social weekend as well, with a Mars trine to the Sun. In air, lots of communication and allowing for opposing points of view. That's another potential here. So this is I think it's a really fine weekend, shaping up to be a fine weekend. And again, closing, allow for the path of least resistance, especially on Saturday, where things can be a bit taut. But if you do that, things will work out, and enjoy some leisure time. I think that'd be a really good thing. Try something new. Try a new recipe, maybe a new restaurant, but I would say cook at home. Do something different. Plenty of YouTube channels to support that sort of thing. Okay. Why don't we get into the star of the day, and a very interesting, in my opinion, I think he's interesting. Considered to be one of the great influencers in the world of children's music. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mozart. Today is Mozart's birthday. Very interesting fellow, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Here is the quote: "I pay no attention to what anybody's praise or blame. I simply follow my own feelings." He's a modern man. Isn't that something you'd hear today? It's actually very Aquarian, isn't it? I pay no attention to whatever, to anybody's praise or blame. I simply follow my own feelings. Mozart's all in his feelings. He's got an interesting chart, and I was looking at his timeline today, and I was looking at like kind of key moments in his life. I was looking at his true node conjuncting Virgo. To me, this is really the sign. This is the aspect of the prodigy right here. You know, Virgos are, everybody talks about how Geminis are really smart, and don't get me wrong, they are. But Virgos are one of the smartest signs in the entire zodiac, and they learn fast and they learn young. So Virgo can flex its intellectual chops at a very early age. And with Mozart, I think that that's obviously true. right around the age of 11 and 12, which is the degree of his ascendant and his true node, he's writing his first opera. I think he made his first performance at the age of 6. So Mozart truly is a prodigy. The other thing that I was looking at with this chart, this timeline, is his Chiron in Capricorn, which is a wounded relationship with his father, very complicated relationship with Mozart and his father. And it's right around the same time that they moved to Italy. So that's where Chiron really starts to come into play, right around adolescence with Mozart. He is a heavy duty Aquarian, right? And even in the 5th house, which we connect to childhood, passion, pastimes, hobbies, creativity, performers. So he's got Sun Saturn conjunction. He is going to be somebody who matures quickly with a Sun Saturn conjunction. He also has Mercury there conjunct his Sun. He's brilliant. I mean, he's got Mercury in Aquarius. He has it just at the end of that first decan. And, he's impulsive. Like, there is an impulsive nature to Mozart with the Mercury Sun conjunction, but he's also patient in some ways, right? With the Sun Saturn, like I'm sure he could, and even with Mercury in a conjunction with Saturn, 6 degrees, I think he's probably capable. He was probably capable once he got the Uranian inspiration, right? Once he got it, he could spend, I think, a lot of time just working on his pieces, head down, focus, concentration, done, right? One of the things that some people know about Mozart is that he was a Freemason. So if we go to the 11th house, which is the house of groups and organizations, we find Neptune there, which puts him in touch with potentially mystical orders, right? So yeah, that makes sense. We get it. There's Neptune. But he's also a dreamer. He's also a romantic. He's chasing Neptune in his chart, right? He's rebellious, he's creative, and he's chasing Neptune. He's chasing something that's ineffable. And maybe that's what makes a lot of his work tremendous. One of these days, I'm going to get into the magic flute. The narrative of the magic flute is pretty wild. And it's definitely inspired by Freemasonry. He has Mars in Cancer at 0, which is the degree of my Mars. He's got it retrograde. And I think that's a very interesting motion in the chart, because the only thing it's really doing is it's got the inconjunct with Saturn. I think, to me, that could be moodiness and petulance, especially as it relates to people telling him what to do, commissioning his works. Saturn here is, well, I paid you for this. There's that famous scene in the movie Amadeus where I think it's the Duke or the Baron or whoever it is, listens to it. And he says, I didn't really care for that. Why, my lord? It was too busy. It had too many notes. Well, my lord, which notes would you like me to remove? Right? That is the Mars retrograde in conjunct with Saturn. Now, whether or not that happened, I don't know. But it's a good story, and it makes for good astrology. Relationships, boy, what a minefield for Mozart. He's got Uranus over there. He's got the South Node. He doesn't want to be tied down. He does not want to be tied down. And he's got that Moon-Pluto conjunction. Wow. In Sagittarius. His mother dying, by the way, was a big blow to him. Really big blow. It plays a significant role in the story. She passes away right around 16, 17 years old. Oh, look at the degrees right there, right around the age of his mother's passing. And it changes him. And I'm sure it probably triggers that square with Uranus. And, he's looking for a replacement, but not a long-term replacement on the emotional side of things with Uranus over here. I would say that Mozart probably a philanderer, right? And maybe even to some degree, and I don't know if this is true or not, but he might even be a little bit different sexually than he might have been portrayed. I have no proof of that. I'm just looking at the chart. We can see here in the second house, there's Jupiter. He's always, he had money. Mozart was a recipient of patronage. Right? He was the guy at the first Patreon. He always did pretty well, except when he got into conflict with guess who? Authorities, whether they were musical authorities, whether they were religious authorities, whether they were teachers. We're going to get into a teacher here for Mozart in a second, and even royalty, right? With that square with Jupiter, he could be cut off. Sorry. Nope, sorry. You're finished here. Go seek the patronage of some other person of royalty, bloodline. Venus at the 29th degree of Aquarius, he's searching for something that might just be out of his grasp. And that's in terms of relationship. Although with the trine with Mars, when Mozart, I think, was on and he was with somebody he was really into, I think that's a really interesting trine, because you're dealing with water and you're dealing with air and fixed air and cardinal water. And I think he could probably be dynamic and exciting in the right relation. But I just don't think these things last for him. Not with Venus at the 29th degree and not with Uranus conjuncting the South Node. The other thing with Venus here, it's in the 6th house. So it represents work relationships. And I think for Mozart, it's all temporary. You get to that 29th degree, you think you've arrived, and it's like, great, well, now what? Now what do we do? And then the retrograde Mars can work in a couple of different directions. Sometimes it could help repair relationships, and at other times it could, even though the conditions are good or they're flowing, right? The retrograde Mars can affect that and have that be a factor in how these relationships either last or unfold. Gemini on the midheaven, again, we see the precocious nature of Mozart, where he's able to do things at a very early age that other people at that time just did not do. All right. So what I wanted to do, because I thought this was an interesting exercise in synastry, is everybody saw the movie Amadeus, and Mozart has a very contentious relationship with Antonio Salieri, who's his teacher and his rival. Now, in reading more about their relationship, there seems to be some opinion that the play Amadeus, which I think was written by Tom Stoppard, and the movie, and even other expositions of their relationship, were kind of blown up. Like the movie is great because you walk away from it saying, well, Salieri was a genius in other ways that Mozart wasn't. So the two were considered to be not only rivals, but in the portrayal of the relationship in Amadeus, deadly rivals. So I thought to myself, well, what does that look like in terms of synastry? And some very interesting things emerge when we look at their two charts together. Mozart and Salieri could not be more different. While Mozart is very Aquarian in his expression, he's kind of like he's a rock star. I mean, that's what Mozart really is. He's a rock star, and he's inventive. and he's doing things that other people before and maybe even after have not done. The long-lasting legacy of Mozart is that Sun-Saturn conjunction. Over here, Salieri's all Leo, so he's very different. Salieri is really trying to court the favor of the court. That's what he wants. Salieri, indulges in the warm glow of praise, either by his peers, and he was considered to be I would call him a minor composer, but he wasn't Mozart. And you could go online and you can hear orchestras and symphoniettes, and they play Salieri's music, but it's nowhere near in the same. But Salieri was a great teacher, and Mozart actually learned from Salieri. So they had a relationship that was mentor-like in a lot of ways. But I do think that there is a rivalry there. And when you look at Salieri's Mars in Mozart's 12th house, that's the hidden enemy, right? So Salieri could have been quite two-faced in his expression and in his relationship with Mozart. So I do think there's some tension there. And I do think that Salieri, being the extremely proud Leo, watching this young upstart Aquarian get all of these patrons and all this praise and everything that kind of went along with it back then, I think he probably did not like it. And as long as he had some modicum of respect and income, he was probably fine with it. But at a certain point, he probably said, you know what? This is enough. And I don't know when that point was, but clearly, even though they're not in full opposition, these are opposite signs and they are just wired differently. And I do believe that Salieri was one of Mozart's hidden enemies. The other thing that's interesting as well, speaking of Mars, is that Salieri's south node is on Mozart's Mars. And I thought about this. I'm like, did these guys have a beef from a prior incarnation? Is this just like the latest, rendition of their beef? And then I thought to myself, well, what would be the modern equivalent of Mozart and Salieri? Did they reincarnate as Tupac and Biggie? I mean, it's kind of one of those things, because the south node is the past, and there's Mozart right there with that Mars, and Salieri's got the south node. I think it's a 29. Is it 29 Gemini? Let me just go down here. Where is that node? Give me that node. Yeah, 29 Gemini. Very interesting. But it's in there, right? And Mozart's Mars is retrograding back onto Sun. So he learned from him too, right? It's exchange of information. But there's something there, right? And then over here, we can see Salieri's moon, which is in Pisces, conjuncting again Mozart's south node. So this brings up a lot of stuff. So I do think that Salieri probably had maternal feelings towards Mozart, right? He wanted to nurture his talent, and I think that's true for a certain phase of their relationship. You could almost make another case or example, again, if we're playing with the south node here, that Salieri could have easily been Mozart's mother in a past life, right? But in this lifetime, he has a relationship where he's here to nurture Mozart's potential with the moon here. But there's also this very interesting relationship with conflict and rivalry. Very interesting stuff. This is a fascinating chart. So when you look at the idea of opposite signs, especially in the same sex, being rivals, I think you look no further than Mozart and Salieri. Even with the Bonhomme and the esprit de corps that the two shared at a certain point, at another point that would, I think, undergo some significant change in tension. And usually I think that likely happened when at a certain point Mozart surpassed Salieri in terms of standing with the court and commissions. And that's when I think this rivalry really began to kick in. Did it exist at the level of Amadeus? I'm not sure, but it's there. The beef is there. Where's the beef? It's right there. All right. So at the end of the show, I get to talk about my sponsor, which I have not queued up, but it won't take me that long to do it. Look right there. And here's a word from our sponsor, True Hemp Science. I start my day every day with True Hemp Science. I have the moon dust. I add it to my power coffee. It is the fuel for Astro Weather. And Chris, my buddy, has all kinds of great organic hemp products. We have testimonials that come through in the comments. So if you want to support an American business, you want to support Main Street, you want to support somebody who's been working diligently against many odds to get his business off the ground and get quality product and service along the way. And service is important. You can actually call these people and they'll talk to you. They will talk to you and they will break down the various formulas. So if you're interested in that, go to truehempscience.com/ref/23. And if you spend $100 or more and type in 15 mins, 15 MINS, you will get free product. And Chattaria and this group has developed a really interesting relationship with Chris and his business. He says, your peeps are some of the most loyal customers I have. So there's a reason why. It's the service and it's the product. That's it. Service and product. When people have that, they don't need to go anywhere else. In fact, they come back. And that's the greatest testimonial or return customers. All right. That's it. I'll be back here, speaking of return, at 12 noon Central Standard Time. And I'll have with me the great Russ Winter from winterwatch.net. I have him here on the last Friday of every month. And I love having Russ on. Today, we're going to talk about Jacques Attali and a few other things as we peel back the veil and illuminate the dystopic nightmare and illusion that they think awaits us. So please join us here. You'll always learn something when Russ shows up. Take good care. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart says open what's possible. I know I went a little long today. That's because I care.